Here's how I edit this photo to look like this. The photo I'm editing today is by Cameron Visuals. If you want to edit this photo for yourself, the link to that will be in the description alongside Cameron's Instagram. So to get started, I'm first seeing that this photo is super low in contrast. So I'm going to bring that up quite a bit just to balance out the image, make it look a little bit more natural. Next, I can now see that the photo is too bright. So I'm going to drop the exposure down a decent amount. Next, I'm going to go into the whites and blacks and establish the endpoints of the image. And I'm just doing this to my eye and what looks good. For shadows and highlights, pretty much the same thing, but I'm actually going to decrease the contrast here by dropping the highlights and upping the shadows. And then I'm going to add back the contrast in the curves because you get more control over that in the curves. Next, for the white balance, this image looks pretty good. I'm just going to zoom into this car because the car should be completely white. But right now, it looks to me like quite blue. So that means the image is too far to the blue and needs to go towards yellow. So I'm just going to move it quite a bit till the car turns mostly white. And you can see that made a big difference and the image looks a lot better. As for green and purple, zooming back into the car, to me it looks a little purple, so we're going to move it towards green just a small amount. And you can just see how much wider that car is and the overall image looking more realistic, more natural looking. So now that we have our base adjustments done, here are the changes before and after. Already a big change, but now we're going to start adding some style using the curves. So I'm going to add the standard 3 points in the shadows, midtones, and highlights and start manipulating those. So here's what I went with. I'm dropping the shadows, midtones, and highlights a little bit, but still having an S-curve. You can see I dropped the shadows the most, midtones in the middle, and then the highlights I dropped the least. So I'm adding contrast as well as giving it more of a darker feel. This also means that I likely should have dropped the exposure more up here, but that's okay. We'll just keep it how it is and paste this channel into the 3 color channels. So now that I have anchor points to start adding color to, I think I'm gonna add blue into the shadows and see how that looks. So I just added a small amount of blue and cyan into the shadows, and I like how that looks. Obviously it looks still green, but it has a little bit more of a contrast to these more warm highlight tones. Let's go into the green channel and see if any changes need to be made. I'm actually going to move it towards purple a little bit and just color balances that area small amounts. Next, for the midtone and highlights, I'm not sure what I want to do, so I'm just going to try some things. So I ended up putting some red into the midtones and some yellow as well. And then I added quite a bit of blue into the very highlights, and that's affecting these white trees over here, just keeping them white instead of getting pulled a little bit towards yellow because I had added some yellow into the midtones and highlights. Next, I'm going to go into the contrast curve and add a fade into the black and whites, and then also finalize the contrast. Alright, so it took me a while, but here's the curve that I went with. Decently sized fade in the whites and blacks, and then just increasing the contrast in the middle here quite a bit as well. Here's the effect of that curve, as well as the curves as a whole before and after. Just a lot more color separation and contrast, just a lot more dynamic, or sorry, dramatic looking image. Next, I'm going to go to the HSL, and I'm going to start by upping the vibrance a little bit to see the colors better. Checking red, I don't see too much. It's just some artifacting around the trees. So I'm going to drop the saturation of red because we're just going to try to remove that color. Next, orange, affecting some of the trees in the road. Just definitely going to want to focus on this. I'm going to move it towards red to give the path a more dramatic feel. Drop the saturation, or sorry, drop the luminance as well to give it a more rich color. And then I think it's looking a little bit too strong, too like artificial. So we're gonna drop the saturation to a natural level. And I think that looks pretty good. Yellow should affect a lot of the image. Yeah, a lot of these brighter trees are yellow. I'm gonna move them just a bit towards orange to contrast with the green that I have in this image, as well as making them brighter. I think actually gonna drop the luminance of yellow. I think these trees are a little bit too distracting, so just gonna help them blend in a small amount more. Saturation, I think, is pretty good how it is. Green, affecting the bushy areas where there's no trees, there's like some grass or something. And I'm gonna push this towards blue to continue the color separation between the yellow and the green, as well as upping the contrast here, or sorry, the saturation to match the yellow, which is pretty saturated. And then dropping the luminance for that contrast between the dark green and then the light yellow. So here are the changes so far. I think that adds to the image. Next, cyan. Doesn't seem to be affecting anything. Just going to drop the saturation of that to remove any that is in the image. Blue seems to be affecting the car. So we're going to zoom in on that. And this top, I think I want it to be black actually. So we're going to drop the blue to remove that color. And then again, I want it to be black. So I'll drop the saturation quite a bit. Sorry, the luminance quite a bit. And then hue will move towards purple to give a more rich color and try to just remove that blue some more. Let's see if I want to go all the way with saturation all the way down. I'm afraid that if I do that, there will be some blue elsewhere that removing it would affect the image too much, but I don't think that's the case, so we'll take it down some more. And then we can also affect this area with the masking. Purple, okay, this is also affecting the car, so we'll do the same thing. Drop the saturation and drop the luminance. And magenta doesn't seem to be in the image, so I'll drop the saturation of that a small amount. And here's the HSL. Definitely a more clean, good looking image. Color grading, again, I mostly don't use color grading because I'm adding color in specific areas in the color channel, in the color channels of the curves. So again, we're going to skip that and go to effects. I do like how grainy these trees feel, and the image looks quite Nice. So I'm just gonna play around with the texture and clarity uh, just to see what I like. Not too big of a difference, just dropping the clarity for some soft look, and then bringing up the texture to bring back that crunch, I guess, that the trees have. Next, sharpening. I usually up this quite a bit, and then adjust the detail and masking to only affect the important parts of the image. So let's zoom in and see how that looks. I like that. Not a huge effect on the image, of course. And yeah, that brings us to the masking. Some things that I want to do here is increase the focus on the subject in the middle of the car, and then maybe try to darken this area and then brighten this area. You can already see this area is quite dark and then this area is more light. So maybe if I bring out that, it would look pretty cool. But first we're just gonna start with the car itself. Put a gradient over the car and increase the contrast. Definitely like it. That just looks a lot more professional. Maybe if I make it brighter to stand out a little bit. There we go. And I think I'm just going to add another gradient that's a little bit larger. And I'm going to make this whole area brighter just to make it stand out some. Increase the contrast as well, because the brightness kind of removes some of that contrast. And I like that. Next, I'm going to try to take away from this area, like I had been saying. And then bring out the top right and see how that looks. I think that looks pretty cool. I'm just gonna reduce the effect of it. Let's see how that looks. I quite like that actually. Next, I'm gonna maybe take away from the outside to bring more focus to the middle by just doing an inverted gradient here and then dropping the exposure of the whole thing, and then just a small amount, and then maybe dropping the clarity. Yeah, I like that. Just put some more attention in the middle. And let's see the masks as a whole. Definitely like the effect that that's bringing on the image. So that's going to be the final edit. Here's before and after.